We're getting so close to the end of this story, and I want you to enjoy these last 2 episodes with all the bells and whistles. And so I'm sharing these fully produced on this free public feed with the support of very generous patrons around the world who help make this possible. So thank you so much to all the patrons. This story, these episodes exist because of your support. And to everyone else, enjoy. Welcome to the Lesbian Romantic Podcast. This is Connection Revealed, Part 49. September 30th, 2063. Fire Blue Territory, North American Province, 11:30 a.m. local time. Louise leaned against the car, careful to avoid touching the hot metal. She needed a moment to calm her racing thoughts. Now that she was finally here, she was nervous. She took in a deep breath and reminded herself of what Michelle had told her. She had never fit in back home, and she would never fit in here. But that was okay. It's what makes me powerful, Louise thought and straightened, walking to the door before she could change her mind again. The door opened before she could knock, and Stucky raced outside, jumping up and down ecstatically. "Hey, boy," Louise said happily and wrapped her arms around him as best as she could. "I missed you." "Hey," a tired voice said, and Louise's throat immediately tightened. She looked up into Elle's sad gray eyes. "We missed you too." "This is not how I wanted it to be," Louise blurted out, hiding her face in Stucky's fur. She hadn't planned to start this way, but it was the gist of what she had come to say. She was disappointed with how life here had turned out. She was disappointed in her life with Elle. "I know," Elle nodded. "I'm sorry." Louise got to her feet, still rubbing Stucky's head as a way to ground herself. He pressed his firm body against her leg, eagerly offering her his reassuring presence. "You look tired," Louise said, aching to trace the dark circles under Elle's eyes with the tip of her finger. She kept petting Stucky instead. "I'm exhausted," Elle nodded. "It's been rough," Louise replied quietly. Elle tucked her hands in her pockets. "At least Ellen is not being an idiot." "Ellen could never be an idiot, even if she tried." Louise smiled tiredly. "She grilled me for a long time and decided it was best to cover everything up. I can't blame her for being critical of my actions." Elle nodded again. "And mine." Louise took in a deep breath. "And yours." "You always said Michelle was capable of manipulating anyone into anything," Elle sighed. "I guess she got the best of us all in the end." Louise arched a skeptical eyebrow. Elle smiled sadly. "I know. It's not her. She didn't make me do anything. It was all me." "Yeah," Louise replied. "It was all you. You can't blame Michelle for being Michelle. But she and Jade are safe for now. No signs of the global government making a move yet." They stood in silence by the front door. There was so much Louise wanted to say, but it was so much harder to say it now that Elle was standing in front of her. "I'm relieved you got to keep your job," Elle said, sounding uncomfortable. "It was very smart of you to point your team to that hacker. You're a hero now." Frowning, Louise huffed in annoyance. "I don't care about my job or pretending to be a hero just because that's what Ellen needs me to do to avoid a scandal in week 1 of her presidency." Elle's shoulders dropped. "Right. You broke my heart," Louise said, her words suddenly bursting out in a fit of anger. Elle's eyes immediately teared up. "Can we talk inside?" she pleaded. "Please." Louise pressed her eyes shut, trying to hold on to the calm she had worked so hard to bring forth. It had taken her days before she was ready to come here to talk to Elle. There was no point in turning back now, not without saying what she needed to say to move on. If she ran from this now, she would only have to come back later. "Okay," Louise said with great effort. "Thank you," Elle said, stepping back to let Louise and Stucky walk past her. Louise felt relieved as soon as she was inside. It was much cooler here, and the cottage had a familiar scent, despite Louise not having visited the place that often before. "It smells like," Louise started to say. "It smells like my aunt here," Elle said, closing the front door behind her. Louise chuckled. "I was going to say like you." Elle blushed and shook her head. "I know I am much like her. Ellen even warned me about it and I didn't listen." "That's not what I was referring to exactly," Louise replied slowly but then shrugged. "I know I broke us," Elle continued, taking in a deep breath. "I know I broke your heart, and I broke my own heart. All because I didn't trust you not to go back to Michelle, even though you tried telling me what you needed from me. I wasn't listening. I was too focused on my own needs. I was too focused on Michelle as an enemy to our relationship, but my own behavior was the enemy. That's why I stepped down. Like I said in my message, I lost track of what was truly important. I made it all about me, and it should have been about you, and about the people I was supposed to serve. I see all of that now, even more. I was so blind." She took in another deep breath after her hurried confession. "So blind," she said again, still breathless. Louise's head spun, turmoil getting the better of her despite all of her plans to stay calm. "I need to sit down," she croaked. "Please, sit down here," Elle said and walked to an old-looking couch, patting it. "I'll get you some water." Louise nodded and sat down. Elle had pretty much said everything she had wanted to hear. Why didn't she feel relieved? "Here," Elle said, handing Louise a glass of water before sitting down at the other end of the couch. Louise accepted the water but didn't drink. Stucky had taken a spot by her feet, keeping a good eye on her. "Sorry if I was a little overwhelming just now," Elle said sadly. "I promised myself I would listen if you showed up one day, and here I am, blurting out everything." She stopped speaking. Louise smiled, adjusting her grip on the glass. "You can be a little much at times." "Yeah," Elle said, tucking her hands under her legs. "And self-centered," Louise added, glancing in Elle's direction. Elle met her gaze. "And self-centered," she said quietly. Shaking her head, Louise finally took a sip of the cold water. It felt good. She closed her eyes and took a moment to calm down. Elle was silent and gave her the space she needed. Louise cleared her throat. "I've been thinking a lot these last few days." Elle replied quietly, shifting in her seat. Louise could feel the tension and despair radiating off of her, and it made her feel so sad because she loved Elle deeply. "You really broke my heart," Louise said again, but then added, "But that's what happens." Elle's lips parted, visibly surprised. Her gray eyes searched Louise's face. "I don't know why, but I can't really see a future without you," Louise continued. "I tried. Believe me, I tried." Elle nodded slowly. "I think this is sort of a new phase for us," Louise pressed on, even though she was struggling. The heartbreak was very real and very painful still. What kind of phase?" Elle asked, her voice trembling. "The phase where we really see each other," Louise said, eyes brimming with tears, "with warts and shadows and whatever other things we each bring with us." Elle pressed her lips together. Louise rolled her eyes. "You know what I mean." "I know what you mean," Elle nodded, now allowing a tiny smile. But what does it mean for us? Louise put the glass on the floor and leaned back. It was very comfortable. Her eyes grew heavy and she longed for the moment when she could just let go and be tired. "I'll need time," she said. "I can't pretend nothing happened. I need time to heal." "Of course," Elle said, turning toward Louise a bit more. "And I'm not sure I can go through this again," Louise continued. "I don't want to break your heart ever again," Elle said immediately. Louise smiled sadly. "I believe you, but you might still. Hey, I might even break yours. I think..." She stopped and gathered her thoughts for a moment. "I think," she sighed, "I think a relationship breaks down at some point. It might even happen several times. Some people break up. Other people start a new relationship with the same person." Elle rested her shoulder against the back of the couch. Louise could feel her question hanging in the air, but for now, Elle didn't ask her. Louise waited until she did. It took Elle a full minute or so. "Does that mean you are," she hesitated, "open to a new relationship with me?" Louise took in another deep, heavy breath. "Like I said, no matter how hard I try, I can't envision a future without you. It's not the same anymore. I see us differently now. But yes, I still want there to be an us." "Are you sure?" Elle asked, moving a little closer. "Because I don't want you to feel like you're trapped here or something." "I am sure," Louise interrupted her. "I know I can build a life here without you. But I don't want to. It's not a clean slate. But I think enough has changed for us to be able to change as well." She met Elle's gaze and held it for a long time. "I love you like I have never loved anyone before. That hasn't changed. It just hurts more than I thought it would." "I'm so sorry," Elle said, tears running down her cheeks. "I never wanted it to hurt. I wanted our love to be..." She shook her head. "Anything but this." Louise clenched her teeth, even though she wanted to cry too. She wanted to cry while being held and soothed. She wanted her safe space back. She wanted to heal together. "Can you please hold me?" she finally asked, her voice weak. Elle scooted over and wrapped her arms around Louise immediately. "I will always be here to hold you from now on," she sobbed. "I promise." Louise was tempted to protest again, but didn't. Instead, she leaned into Elle's embrace and cried in silence. The tears ran down her face as the ache deep inside her slowly became a little less intense. After a while, Elle tenderly cupped Louise's face with her hands, guiding Louise's gaze up. "I love you. I love you," she whispered. "Can I kiss you?" Louise didn't hesitate. "Please." Elle's lips tasted of salt, and Louise briefly thought this was how a second chance tasted, tinged with sadness and burning with hope. She wrapped her arms around Elle and pulled her closer. Their kiss was the kiss of two lovers who had lost everything, but then found their way back to each other. It was a kiss filled with a desire to go deeper, to connect more than ever before. This was part 49 of Connection Revealed. We're almost there, just one more episode to go after this one, and it will come out on this feed in 2 weeks. Now, if you sign up for my Patreon, which you can do at no cost at all, and you also don't have to enter a credit card, you just go to patreon.com/lesbianromantic and you can become a free member. And as a free member, now and then I drop something, a little bit early or a teaser or some behind the scenes stuff. So you can stay up to date with what's going on with the podcast for free. Of course, there's also the Bells and Whistles Theater, and this is the beating heart, the creative home of this podcast, mostly because of its supporters, the members of the Bells and Whistles Theater. And you can also join the theater at the same link, patreon.com/lesbianromantic. And if you do become a member, you get early access to the new story that's coming up. Actually releasing the first episode in just a few days. Lots and lots of extra scenes, my 2 exclusive short stories, the complete collection of stories of the Lesbian Romantic, and much more behind-the-scenes content. So if all that sounds good and you're a really big fan of the podcast, check out the Bells and Whistles Theater at patreon.com/lesbianromantic and, get started with that new story in just a couple of days. All right. Thank you so much to the existing supporters of this podcast. As I keep producing, as I keep being able to create these stories with your support, I always discover a new depth of just being humbled and being so grateful for all these amazing people around the world who are pitching in to do this work, to create these stories. And it's hard to express how it makes me feel. So thank you so much. All right, that is all for this episode on the public free feed. Again, much more at patreon.com/lesbianromantic. And I will see you there soon, or I will see you here on this feed in 2 weeks. Take very good care, and bye. Oh, after the next episode, after part 50 of Connection Revealed, this public feed is going on a break between seasons. But I will stay active on Patreon, sharing updates on the new story, and of course, early access to episodes for patrons. So it really is worth going to patreon.com/lesbianromantic. Okay,